When I was in grade 7, I had a teacher who broadly applied their rebukes to the class. We had one occasion in which someone did something stupid, and then the teacher proceeded to yell at us for the entire remainder of the period. Now, this wouldn't have been so bad had we only had 2 or 3 minutes left in the class. Unfortunately, we had about 45 minutes left in the class. Have you ever had an experience like that where you have been hit as just one of the many who have been targeted by a particular insult or slur or just a question of your character, and it didn't apply to you, but yet you're still feeling the rebuke of it? I think we've all had a moment like that in our life where we've just felt completely attacked for something that we maybe even didn't even know was an issue. And suddenly we're being confronted as if we ruined Christmas for poor little Timmy, who just really wanted his first Christmas present ever, but isn't going to get it because we killed Santa. Oh no! That's the kind of feeling that we can get sometimes when people come too hard with their rebukes against us. So how much worse is it when you're just finding yourself in your faith and someone calls you into account? We've been talking about Deuteronomy and the divine person, and this week we're going to take a little different turn with how we approach our video blog versus the blog that was written in on the website, which, if you're interested in reading that, again, revoliviap.weebly.com, you can find that blog available for you to read, and it's Deuteronomy and the divine person, holiness, and sacrifice. Now, when we're talking about this in terms of our daily lives, and not just how this tells us about the divine person, it's a little different than what we might expect. See, when we approach sin from an Old Testament perspective, a lot of the times it's approached in what I've called a sin in the camp approach. It's this idea that we must remove anything that is not pursuing God from our presence, because that will make us unclean also. And so when we approach this idea of speaking love to one another, what does that look like if the only thing that we think about doing in the presence of our friends and family is to take the things out of their lives that don't make them holy enough, forcing others to sacrifice things that maybe they didn't even think about in their lives? Now, this is not to say that we can't address sin in the church. We must address sin in the church. We must help others understand how it is to live according to what God is calling us to do in our lives, and how to avoid the things that can continue to break us apart. But that doesn't mean we apply broad strokes and create even more messes while trying to help others understand the good news of the gospel. What do I mean by all this? Let's take a step back. Not every single person who comes to your church is a believer. Even if everyone confesses to be, not every person is necessarily in a place where they're ready to hear a particular message. And so, as we approach sin, and as we approach how others are dealing with things in their lives, let's be mindful that we can't come out guns a-blazing and just pluck sin from the camp. You see, there's this thing called grace that a lot of us need to learn how to apply a little bit more liberally than the rebukes that easily fall from our mouths. I had a hard time with that teacher, and my parents can attest to this, I'm sure. And the teacher probably could as well, but I'm not naming names here. I had a really hard time. You see, when that person rebuked me as a part of the problem, when I had done nothing, my hackles were raised. And let me tell you, I am stubborn enough to admit that I'm not about to give in to these kinds of demands. You see, that was the year I had watched Air Force One for the first time, and you know what my policy on all of this was? We don't negotiate with terrorists. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, guys. But that was the position that I was coming from. And that can be the position that many of us come from when we are attacked over something we didn't realize was a problem in our lives, or something that Scripture even talked about. And so when this teacher approached and gave their spiel of 45 minutes reign of terror, all I could think about was, I can't live like this. I can't live being attacked like this. Now, being the lawful good kind of person that I am, that didn't mean that I didn't do my homework for her, but understanding that doing homework and handing homework in were two separate things, I decided not to hand in my homework whatsoever. I would diligently do my homework to the best of my abilities, knowing full well that I would get great percentages on it, and did not hand in one piece for the rest of that semester. It got to the point where my parents were called in because suddenly I'm failing out of nowhere, and they're like, what is going on? You do your homework every night, and you make amazing grades on your tests. What's going on? My homework hadn't been handed in because my heart wasn't in a place to deal with a 45-minute tirade against me. So when people rebel against what they're hearing in the church, it's not a big surprise because some people react just like me. And so when they walk in expecting to find hope in our churches and they hear, here's all the things you need to get rid of in your life in order to come to know Jesus better, that's a hard pill to swallow. What if instead, as we are approaching the Scriptures, we instead approach them with eyes of grace and hope? And we share with people that there are things that we can do differently in our lives. But instead of approaching it and saying, we got to get rid of the sin in the camp, which often turns into, well, if you're not going to remove it from your life, then maybe we should remove you from our community. What if instead of doing that kind of trash, we instead show the grace and love of Jesus Christ in the way that we love one another and build one another up? Yes, there are things that break us and ruin us that happen in our daily lives. There are things that are toxic to us, but we can't remove them from others' lives if they're not in a place where they're willing to hear it. I love using the example that sometimes when a queer Christian will come to the church, all they'll hear is, it's wrong to be queer, it's against Scripture, and all of that. When in reality, the most pressing situation in their life might be a battle with anger, or alcohol, or any number of other things that can ruin their lives far more quickly than any relationship choice or anything might do so in their lives. When we try to target things in other people's lives, we do what a favorite pastor of mine said. We throw rocks at goats and hit the sheep too. We miss out on how we can help build and edify one another simply because we're so focused on removing the sinful parts of people's lives instead of building them up in hope and grace and truth and love. How much more tightly knit would our communities be if instead of looking at the pews around us, behind us, in front of us, and seeing people as, oh, that's the thing that they do, or there's that liar right now. What if instead we approach them with the same truth, grace, love, you name it, that Jesus did when he interacted with even those like Judas? He still welcomed Judas at his table, even though he knew that he had betrayed him. We don't do that, not often enough. And so this week, my challenge for you is this. Consider how it is you're approaching sin in others' lives. Consider how it is you're addressing the things around you. Maybe you're not a pastor and you don't get up to preach, but maybe you're leading your children or your friends or your family as an example of Christ. You might be the only Christian in your workplace, and so think about that the next time that you rebuke someone. How are they going to see Jesus? Is Jesus, or their perception of Jesus in you, going to be extremely negative? Or are they going to see that you stopped, understood what was going on, and helped them to see how to do things better? That's my challenge for you this week. And so as I leave you at the end of this 10-minute discussion, I just want to give you a heads up that over the next 2 weeks, we will not be having our 10-minute discussions as we prepare for little Mr. Tristan's second birthday, which is hard to believe that he's already 2. And so we will be off from our 10-minute discussions for the next 2 weeks. There will still be blog posts during this time, so you can still continue to engage with those, asking questions, critically thinking, and understanding your faith at a different level. There will also be a book review posted in this time. There is an amazing one that I've had the chance to read over the last couple of weeks, and I am still chewing on it. Jesus and John Wayne. Look forward to that review. It is definitely a book that you are going to want to pick up. So God bless everyone, and I look forward to seeing you again in this format in 2 weeks.